live from the San Francisco Bay Area. It's time for Zig in the Zone with Ralph Zig Tyko.
Hey, we are back, comfortably zoned in the zone. I'm Ralph Tyko. This is a video podcast that makes me happy because I could have special guests and as well as Paulie and see what they look like. Charlie Vascellaro, how are you?
I'm well, Ralph. It's good to see your face as well.
Yeah, we've been doing podcasts together on and off for a number of times. We both have what I described to you before when we were talking, the Walter Mitty in us. And we have the heart and the intellectualism and the passion for baseball. Now, where more is that generated than Cooperstown, New York, where you are right now?
Yeah, I've been hanging around with a lot of like-minded folks the past few days and had some great spontaneous interactions and some that were planned. But I had lunch on my birthday with Tim Wiles, the former library director here, another what I would call a eccentric baseball intellectual with a varying variety of interests and ways of approaching the game. Tim makes me think of other people like Gabe Schechter, who you know, who used to work in the library at the Hall, and Russell Walensky, and the guys I met all these years ago. Willie Steele was with us for lunch too. Willie Steele is a writer and a conference organizer. We attend the Nine conference every year in the spring, and he happened to be in town. He's working on a book. And so our paths all collided, and we had a great time on Friday, the 22nd of May, which is my 62nd birthday, and also the 50th anniversary of the first day my father ever took me to the Baseball Hall of Fame. Landed on
Wow.
the 50th anniversary. I've been coming here for 50. I was sitting in this room 50 years ago with my old man.
Wow.
Wow. Very
That's history,
exciting.
folks. That's history.
That's some history.
Um, uh, why did you choose baseball over basketball, football, or any of the sports that you could have chosen?
That's a great question, Ralph. And I think I chose baseball largely because of the proximity I had to places like Shea Stadium when I was a kid. I grew up in Queens and then Long Island. I had uncles on my mother's side of the family, her brothers, that were all rabid fans, and they brought me to baseball games when I was young. I went to my first Mets game in 1972. I was 8 years old. I was with Uncle Tony. He took me later in 1973 to game three of the Mets and Reds NLCS, the famous Pete Rose, Bud Harrelson
Oh,
brawl.
wow.
I was a
Wow.
9-year old. And so when things like this happen to you when you're a kid, you gravitate towards baseball. And I'll add one thing to that. I think the writing about baseball is just better writing than the writing you see about any other sports. I don't think any game lends itself as well to literary treatment as baseball does. And I loved reading the newspaper when I was a kid. I was a paper boy, and I would always read the whole sports section of Newsday in the afternoon, even before I put it in my basket and took them out to the people whose paper it was. I would read it first, and then when I handed them the paper, I could talk about what was in there as well.
Wow. What part of Queens are you from? Because I happen to have been raised in Jackson Heights.
I'm very familiar with Jackson Heights and all the great Colombian bakeries they have there. My family, my first house when I was born, the first house my parents took me to was in Elmhurst. And then later we moved to Howard Beach. And then from Howard Beach, we moved to Long Island.
Oh, wow. We share memories, and that's what this show is about. But where we grew up is so important to our being formed that I can't express that enough. And I'm glad you're here, Charlie.
Me too. I'm glad I'm there, and I'm glad I'm here. Both
Right,
places.
right. America today. And that's all part of Americana. And we're blessed with that because through the internet, I've reconnected with literally 100 people that from my past, and a lot of whom love the show, a lot of whom won't say a word, but they have memories of us together, and that's great. The 73 World Series playoffs was important, but the 73 World Series stands out in my mind because even though I was born and raised in New York and had the golden age of baseball before me, I got to see the first World Series, and Jack Benny threw out the first pitch for the A's, Charlie O'Finley, and I got to see Game 6, and I got to be majorly depressed with the results, and because I have passion. You care about the teams you love, and I'm sure that's true with you. What's the first thing that you visit when you get back to Cooperstown
Oh, do you
each
already know
year?
the answer? Do you already know the answer to this question?
I do.
So, a few
That's
years.
what we call an underhand pitch from
Yeah,
Dad
yeah,
in the
yeah.
front yard, so he can knock it out of the park. Go ahead.
I know the answer to this one too. So, yes, about a decade ago, maybe right about 10 years ago, I discovered that the first black umpire in Major League Baseball history, Emmett Ashford, is buried here in Cooperstown. I was visiting somebody else's grave when I made this discovery, and I mentioned Tim Wiles before, the former library director. He's the one who had let me know that where I was. We had attended a funeral together for a guy named Harry Skillman, who I never knew, but I became a friend of his after he died. I was at his funeral, and I continued to visit his grave afterwards. And when I was there one time, I posted a picture of it, and Tim Wiles said, "Well, you're about 50 paces away from Emmett Ashford's grave." And I was kind of surprised to hear that. I was also kind of surprised to see that in Cooperstown, this beautiful Lakeview Cemetery, it's right up the lake from where I'm sitting, about a half a mile around the corner from where I'm sitting. There are not any other famous baseball players buried. There's a couple of people you might know, a guy named Ken Smith, who worked for the Hall of Fame and was a writer. He's buried there. There's a couple of cup of coffee guys that played a little bit that ended up being buried there. But Emmett Ashford, I think, is the most well-known of anybody buried in that cemetery. And when I found his grave 10 years ago, it was completely unkept. It had moldy mushrooms growing out of it. It needed a power washing. I hired the attendant at the cemetery to bring a power washer out and clean it up for us.
Wait. The mushrooms are gone? No, I'm kidding. Go ahead. Sorry.
We blew them all off. The truffle.
I'm sorry. You know where my mind's at, Charlie. In case you don't know me, I'm a stand-up comedian. I'm already going
could
to
probably find some wild mushrooms here in Cooperstown. I'm sure it wouldn't be that hard.
We'll call them the Hall of Fame mushrooms, HOF.
But,
there we go.
but at Ashford's grave, I created a kind of a shadow box display case, a plastic case that I put on the clean grave, and I stuck some significant artifacts in there. An NL president, Bill White ball, the first black president of the National League. Bill Lucas. I put a picture of Bill Lucas, the first black general manager with the Atlanta Braves. I put a Jackie Robinson card in and a Frank Robinson card in, first black player, first black manager. And I contextualized Emmett Ashford's place in the game by explaining that he was as significant in the game's history as these other guys in that shadow box with him. And I believe that other people started to realize that and learn that. Friends of mine started making regular pilgrimages to the grave when they're in town as well. His daughter, Adrienne Breton, who lives in California in Orange County, I take a picture every time I'm there and send it to her. And I take a before and after picture. I show how it looked when I got there. I show how it looked when I left. And she appreciates that. And we've developed a friendship, a kinship out of this relationship. She's way over on the other side of the country and doesn't get too many opportunities to visit her father's grave. So I do it for her.
Nice. Very nice. Now, people that don't know baseball maybe consider Emmett Ashford as insignificant. But there's also another person's grave that no one in baseball considers insignificant. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I have a couple of places I like to visit regularly, and some of them include cemeteries. And one of my favorite towns is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And I live in Baltimore, which means Pittsburgh's about 4.5 hours away. And I make it a point to get out there every year during the baseball season, sometimes even not during the season. There are a lot of things about Pittsburgh and the history of Pittsburgh that I enjoy, and the baseball history of Pittsburgh that includes things like Roberto Clemente and Willie Stargell. And of course, there's a Roberto Clemente Museum in Pittsburgh.
And Maz, of course.
And Maz, and the great statues around PNC Park, which are of Clemente, Stargell, Honus Wagner, and Bill Mazeroski, all positioned around the ballpark. But one year, I don't know how many years ago this was, maybe around 2011, I learned that Josh Gibson was buried in the Allegheny Cemetery in Pittsburgh. And I found my way to his grave, which wasn't easy the first time. Now I know exactly where it is, and I can get there without any directions. But when I first was looking for it, one of the things I had to find out about it was that it's in the back of this tremendous cemetery. And why do you think it's in the back of the tremendous Allegheny Cemetery? That's where they buried black people, in the back of the cemetery.
Wow. Wow.
So, yes, which is one of the reasons why it took me so long to find it the first time. It was a very humble marker. It still is. Nothing. It's not upright. It's a flat headstone of about 1 feet by 2 feet, maybe. It's not that big. And it just says Josh Gibson and his date of birth and his date that he died, and said legendary baseball player. That's all it says. When I first found that marker, the grass was growing over it as well. It does get visited. Yeah, I'm not the only guy that it gets visited more than Ashford's does. Anytime I go back to Gibson's grave, I can see that people have been there because they leave things. They leave offerings. They leave mini bats, balls, bobbleheads, cards, baseball cards. Yeah, it's it's not to the magnitude of Babe Ruth's offerings, but a significant amount, and so many that the caretakers at the cemetery do have to remove them periodically, and they don't throw it away. They keep it in a time capsule that they have in the offices of the cemetery, where they have all the things that people have left on Josh Gibson's grave, depending on what kind of state of decomposition. You leave a baseball on somebody's grave, eventually it starts to decompose. And so there are things that don't end up being bright and shiny anymore, but I think they still respectfully do not throw it away if it looks like it was left with some sincerity and with some reason.
Let me throw in a quote about Josh Gibson from Branch Rickey. And he said once that he would have preferred 2 Campies for 1 Gibson. That's how good Gibson was. And I was an adult fan until I realized the magnitude of what he accomplished and the competitiveness and the greatness of the league that died, ironically, after Jackie integrated. The league and the black newspapers that supported it died shortly after that. But Ernie Banks, Henry Aaron, the aforementioned to us, Monty Irvin, am I right?
Larry Doby.
Larry Doby. We chatted a little bit about those guys. Can you recreate how great in your mind that you think Monty Irvin was?
Yeah, I think that particular group of what I call the crossover players, guys who played in both the Negro major leagues and the white major leagues that made the crossover. And a guy like Irvin was just about as good in both leagues. He put up some fantastic numbers in the Negro leagues. In 1946, as a member of the Negro Leagues World Series champion Newark Eagles, he was teammates with Larry Doby as well. He had 424 that season. So, we talk about Ted Williams and hitting 406 one year and being the last guy to hit 400. Well, Irvin was doing that too. Irvin was a slick fielder. He was a power hitter. He was a percentage hitter. He was durable. He was statesman-like. He was a mentor to Willie Mays.
That's what I was going to say. Without Monty Irvin, Willie Mays never would have developed as quickly as he did. Boy, we think a lot alike, Charlie.
Yeah, Irvin was special. And
okay. Is there any exhibit or anything you will experience in every year that's new to you when you visit Cooperstown?
There are some stops I like to make. When you walk into the Hall of Fame, there's a pretty grand entrance, and you have to go either pay your admission or show your lifelong pass, like I have. It gets me in the Hall of Fame for free. But you got to go through that entryway. Then when you go through that entryway, that's to the left of the doors. Once you get past the admission counter, then you glance to your right, and this is where you would eventually enter the plaque gallery where all the plaques are. But before you get to that hallway where the plaque gallery begins, there's a statue of Buck O'Neil. And the statue of Buck O'Neil is also the representation of the Buck O'Neil Award, special award that was named in his honor that has to do with contributions to the game that can't be quantified statistically. A lot of what Buck O'Neil is known for existed outside of the foul lines. And there's a very dignified statue of Buck O'Neil standing straight up, perfect posture with a suit on. He always was impeccably dressed. Even his statue, he's impeccably dressed. In his statue, his hands are visible in the front of his body. And when I come into the Hall of Fame, I always put one of my hands on one of his hands, as the first thing I do when I walk into that building is kind of touch hands with Buck O'Neil. In recent years, just a couple of years ago, they put a statue of Hank Aaron just across the hall from Buck O'Neil. And I go over to both of those guys and say hello. I'm an author of a biography of Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron's my all-time favorite player. And when I walk into the Hall of Fame, I say hello to Hank Aaron and Buck O'Neil before I do anything else. I kind of share
What
agree.
did you? Yeah, excuse me. I'm just real curious to know what you learned about Hammer and Henry from writing that book.
What I learned about Hammer and Henry from writing that book is that he is a major person in the civil rights movement. Hank Aaron was a champion of causes and people. And people think of Hank Aaron as a quiet and dignified guy, which he was. He was, I call him the last great elder statesman of the game. I think that's true. I don't think anybody has assumed that role since we lost Hank a few years ago. But I don't think people realize what a champion of civil rights he was, how active he was in the causes, how connected he was. Hank Aaron broke in Milwaukee, but he was also part of a big baseball move, which was the move to Atlanta with the Braves in the 60s. And when Aaron showed up in Atlanta, he was in the deep South. He became the first black player in the major leagues to represent a team in the deep South. And he had to win people over. And he did win people over, but he also had such a important presence, such a dignified way about himself, and a presence that people like Jimmy Carter would gravitate to Hank Aaron. Jimmy Carter told me when I wrote the book, I asked for some quotes from him. He said that if Hank Aaron had not played in Atlanta for the Braves in those years, he would never have been elected the governor of Georgia. Aaron
Oh
was
wow!
symbolic and emblematic of change and progress being made in these areas. And so Jimmy Carter needed an ally like Hank Aaron, and Hank Aaron needed an ally like Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter said, first of all, he would never have been elected governor, but he also wouldn't have been elected president if it wasn't for Hank Aaron. Jimmy Carter used to ask Hank Aaron to stand in for him on occasions where he couldn't be somewhere. I'll give you, for example, the swearing in of a new president of the Dominican Republic. And Jimmy Carter had an engagement already booked, but he was invited to attend this, inauguration of the president in Dominican Republic. He said, I can't make it. And he sent Hank Aaron a letter, or made a phone call, hey, can you stand in for me? So this is the kind of statesman that Henry Aaron was. He was standing in for presidents at inaugurations that they couldn't attend.
And he was also the real kingpin of two great teams, the 57 and 58 Milwaukee Braves were as deep and as great on every level, catching, infield, outfield, depth, as there ever was in the National League in the 50s. And for me to say that, I mean, I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah.
But those guys impressed me. Win, lose, or draw, they won one and then lost another to the Yankees, who were absolutely great. And whether you hated the Yankees or not, you respected the Yankees in those days. Anything before we get out of here? Paulie's got some announcements, and we got to take a break. Anything about the Yankees that stands out in your mind as a New Yorker, no matter who you rooted for?
No, the Yankees were always my rival. I was a Mets fan, and so I lived through periods with the Yankees, but also it's funny. When I became a Mets fan in the early 70s, the Yankees weren't that good yet. And they were coming out of a doldrums, a decade-long doldrums. Last time they were in the World Series was 1964, and they didn't get there again until 76 against the Reds, which they got clobbered. So the Yankees, the big bad Yankees, weren't such big bad Yankees just yet. That came again a little later, the dynasty teams of the 90s and early 2000s. But to me, they were rivals. One thing that stands out as a Mets fan was the 2 years that the Yankees occupied Shea Stadium in 1974 and 75.
The
Because that was my home.
The Elliott Maddox years.
Yeah, and we had to share our ballpark with them, which to me felt like a little bit of a burden. I didn't really. I'd see an occasional Yankees game at Shea Stadium, and I thought, when are we going to get these guys out of here? What are they doing in our
Right,
house? I did see
right.
one spectacular thing though during a Yankees game in 1974 at Shea Stadium. I saw Roy White steal home, and I was amazed. I was sitting on the first base side with a pretty good seat down in the field level, and I'm seeing Roy White coming down the third base line. And at first, I couldn't even fathom the idea of stealing home. I was shocked. I was, in this state of surprise. I looked at the guy next to me. It was my buddy's dad, and I said, "What in the world is going on?" Well, he's just running
Uh,
down the line and slid right across the plate, and he was safe.
Charlie, I think your youth is terrific, but you missed out on one hell of a Jackie Robinson experience over the years. Speaking of stealing home, he was electrifying. That's the only way to describe him.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if you thought that he might make a good manager someday.
Jackie Robinson?
Yeah,
I think Jackie Robinson would have made a good whatever he wanted to do any day. He was one of the most focused and disciplined people. If that's what he wanted to do, sure. However, I also think that Jackie Robinson, by the time he was done playing baseball, had bigger things in baseball on his mind, and he pursued them to the fullest. It's a shame that Jackie died when he was so young in his 50s, because he was having an impact in a way, in meaningful ways. The Jackie Robinson Foundation, which thankfully he was alive in time to put that together, has contributed to college scholarships and placing people in jobs and advancing people in society. And so, Robinson was a manager of people. He was a manager of situations. He was a businessman. He was a business leader. I mean, what can you say about Jackie Robinson?
chock full of nuts.
That's right.
That that was an entity at the time.
He
Hey,
created
Paulie,
banks.
how we doing? Pardon
Banks
me.
for the black community in Brooklyn. He created banks, where people could feel comfortable and trust the institution where they were putting their money.
Right, the Bedford-Stuy area was. The '50s was not all it was cracked up to be in terms of racial harmony. Tough times in New York. Tough times, any times. Paulie, give us
That's right.
some words.
All right. So no, that you're right at the right time. You were talking about as I go and do this transition here. It is that time. It's that time where we actually do what we need to do. It's time for some housekeeping. It's time to pay the bills, and we're going to do a break. Please like, subscribe, and follow us. We'll give you that information in a minute, but we would like you to like, subscribe, and follow these guys. These are our sponsors. These are the ones that let us sleep well at night. Here we go, guys. Whether it's criminal defense, estate planning, or civil litigation, the answer is the law offices of Andrew Doja. Call us today at 510-865-1600 or find us on the web at dojalaw.com.
For tenant and landlord disputes, there's no other than the law office of Jeff Canberra. Call now 1-510-865-7369, and don't forget to tell them Zig sent you.
That's right. And don't forget to go like, subscribe, and follow Zig. That's right. He's on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and of course, now on Twitch. We would love for you to like, subscribe, and ring that little bell on YouTube. That way you're notified when a new episode of The Zone drops. And we are back here live in studio.
The things you do to be a premier producer of podcasts in the Bay Area, in the Valley, you're good at what you do, and the reason you're good at what you do is two things: you have empathy, and you're an exacting person. You're gonna get it right, whatever it takes. So,
Well, I appreciate that. But we're back live in Cooperstown with Charlie Vascellaro. Charlie, thanks for hanging in there for that commercial break. We got to do that thing that pays the bills, buddy. But we
No problem. I'm
you.
in a pretty comfortable chair, so it's fine here.
Tell us a little bit about your surroundings and where you're at currently, right now.
This is the Grand Dam of Cooperstown, the Otesaga Hotel, which is where all the players stay when the Hall of Famers stay when they're here. It becomes exclusive at that time unless you have some kind of pass to get in. But my dad took me here when I was 12 years old, 50 years ago. And I've been in love with the place ever since. Right to my right is the famous veranda where people sit on the rocking chairs and look out at the lake stretching out for 10 miles in front of them, Otsego Lake. And this room I'm in is kind of a sitting room off to the side of the lobby. They call it the Oak Room. When I came into the hotel today, I told them I had to sit for a podcast. And I asked the concierge at the hotel where I could do that. And she said, set yourself up over in the Oak Room. You can have it all to yourself. So I'm in this great room. And, I think sitting in this big old leather chair, which has obviously been here for quite some time, all I can imagine is whose ass print I'm sitting in here. I mean, how many guys,
if they had the check-in records over the years of which room people were in, that in itself would be interesting to crazy baseball fans like us.
Yeah.
I'm glowing for you being there. How about that?
Well, thanks. It feels pretty good. Anytime you walk into this place, it always feels good. So.
Yeah. What do you want to leave the folks with the state of Cooperstown, the museum? What can be improved? What could happen to make it the best it could be?
They've done some great things in just the past couple of years. Last year, I came here for the grand opening of the Yakyu Japanese baseball experience. And this is, if you ask me, it's the most state-of-the-art, coolest thing they got going on in the hall right now. It really pops. It's got technology. It has things that you wouldn't always associate with a museum. You're not looking in dark display cases at old pieces of laundry. You're really seeing some things. It's got all different kinds of three-dimensional and multimedia aspects to it. It's very bright, and it tells a fantastic story that does go back to the old halcyon days. It does go back to the black and white days of baseball in Japan and Japanese Americans playing baseball in America too. But it really is so comprehensive. And the great Ichiro, he was inducted last year. There's this three-dimensional statue of Ichiro. There's another one of Hideo Nomo, and it just comes right at you. That's the newest. Well, it was the newest. There's some new things that just popped in this year, but also the year before that, they created the Souls of the Game exhibit, which is now what is the Black experience, the Black players experience, which includes both Negro Leagues history, integration, and modern history of Black players. And again, that's a room where you can touch on a screen and animated video of Monty Irvin's experience might come up, or the great Effa Manley, who was Monty Irvin's boss, the owner of the Newark Eagles. So the amount of education that's available in these rooms is spectacular, and they've done a nice job bringing it up to date. and making it approachable and understandable, even for generations of younger fans who, don't know this. They don't have this knowledge. They're acquiring it for the first time. So they do a good job with that. It's funny. I don't know when you say areas for improvement. Some of the old exhibits are still in there, and I think they leave them there for posterity's sake. But some of the older exhibits, like the one about the Doubleday Ball and the origins of the game, that stuff, that has a very grandma's house feel to it. It feels like you're in grandma's. You can almost smell the mothballs when you're in those rooms. But they don't change those. I don't know if they should or not. I kind of blow through them now because they don't captivate me the way that the other stuff does. There was a time when I would spend a little time going through those things and looking at the old balls. But I think maybe if there was a way to improve the ancient history by popping it up a little bit, I think that might be, maybe give those old displays a little bit of an update is where I would see.
Hey, you mentioned the Japanese.
Nothing like nostalgia. Looking at the old balls. Go ahead. Sorry, Zig. You were saying. Sorry.
Try not to look at the old balls too closely.
Yeah. My eyes are up here. I keep telling you, my eyes are up here.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. A little respect. I'm not one of those baseball fans, not just one of those with old balls. Hey, question for you. Lefty O'Doul, speaking of the Japanese tradition, he's not in the Hall of Fame, is he?
Well, he does not have a plaque in the gallery. His name is on exhibits and displays. And to your point, especially in the Yakiyu exhibit, he is acknowledged and recognized. He's received awards for what he did in Japan, for being an ambassador. The filmmaker, John Leonidakis, you might be familiar with him, had a recent documentary out about Lefty O'Doul. And Lefty O'Doul is a significant figure in baseball history, even Major League Baseball history, but also the Pacific Coast League, which at the time of in his day, the PCL was practically a rival major league. And that's another guy, like you talk about Monty Irvin, who was a pure and great hitter that maybe a lot of fans don't realize what kind of ball player Lefty O'Doul was, because how much of his career took place outside of the major leagues.
Yeah, and the worst place that they took his name down from was the Hofbrau in San Francisco. I'm just saying, from a fat man in the Bay, they took his Hofbrau out, and it broke a man's heart.
Well, combined with the things he did in Japan and his batting average, he was a damn good hitter. So I would say if you could put Torrey in for his managerial greatness, combined with his less than Hall of Fame greatness as a player, and all that's subjective as well, you ought to be able to get Lefty O'Doul a plaque.
Yeah, in there somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know what you mean.
Hey, listen, what a terrific show. Thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here.
Would you please come back on a regular basis? That's all I'm asking.
I think we can find some time to do this regularly.
Beautiful.
We would love to see some footage of Cooperstown. Anything you want to snap pictures of, any video you want to snap, that way you can illustrate it and send it to us ahead of time. We also know that you've got at least a book out there. Please give yourself a shameless plug. Tell us where we can get your stuff.
Well, my Hank Aaron biography was written quite some time ago, about 20 years, but I do still see it for sale. It's Greenwood Press, Greenwood Publishing. Hank Aaron is the title, Hank Aaron. And you can probably find copies in places where you find books online. Every now and then I need to pick up another copy for myself.
Well, there you go.
I worked on a children's book called At the Ballpark with an illustrator friend of mine. Kevin O'Malley. He did the drawings and I did the writing. And we had a lot of fun with that book a while back. And I'd like to resurrect that project because I don't know how many copies of that book are still around, but that was an interactive kind of activity book for kids to take to the game that would kind of get them through 9 innings and keep their attention on the game itself during those 9 innings. So that was our goal with that book.
Well, that sounds like a great thing to bring back to the zone and share with us. That we would love to resurrect it, so to speak.
Certainly.
So, all right,
Beautiful.
Charlie Vascellaro, where can we keep up with everything that you're doing? Social media, what do we got?
Yeah, I mean, I have Instagram and Facebook pages. I don't have anything individual, but I will plug something that I do out in Arizona. I work for an organization called the Arizona Baseball Legacy and Experience, and we create museum exhibits. And we have in Scottsdale, Arizona, at a restaurant called Fraser's Old Town Tavern, which is a neat steakhouse just around the corner from Scottsdale Stadium. And if you're in Arizona, I would highly recommend going to Fraser's Tavern and seeing our museum exhibit that we created on Arizona baseball history. We also have created something called the Arizona Baseball Trail, which is a scavenger hunt map that people can follow around to historic ballparks and sites significant in Arizona baseball history. When I'm not in Cooperstown, when I'm not in Baltimore, you can find me out in Arizona. I attend the entire spring training season. I lead group tours for a company called Road Scholar and take people to the ballpark and create an environment of a 5-day baseball vacation for people during the spring. And I also like to be out there during the Arizona Fall League season, which is when the regular season's over. Here you can go watch the top minor league prospects and see guys who might be the rookie of the year next year, like what's his name, McConaughey on Detroit. I saw him in the Fall League a few months ago. Now he's tearing it up on a daily basis.
Holy smokes, we've only just touched the tip of this iceberg that we call Charlie Vascellaro. You've got your own podcast right there and a wrapping. Wow, there's so much in that last minute and a half I want to dissect and take apart, but there's not enough time in our day. Please come back. Join us again, please. And lovely seeing you. Zig, get us out of here like only you can, my friend.
I'm just going to say, keep the faith. We're in tough times, and we got to band together. And that Benjamin Netanyahu and Trump both were admitted, not together, into the hospital. Their days are numbered. We're going to have a better life when they're gone. You don't wish for anybody to die. You wish for them to stick around and take some responsibility for what they did. They both have war crime history, and they should be in jail.
Well, and hopefully by the next time we're in the zone, who knows? We may live in a different world.
That would be great.
So,
absolutely.
All
Be
right.
well, everybody.
All right. Until next time, thank you again, Charlie, for joining us. We really appreciate you.
You bet.
All right. Until next time, guys, don't forget to stay in the zone.